Welcome back, comic book collectors and enthusiasts. My name is Brandon, and you are watching M.O.N.Comics. Happy Friday. Thank you for tuning in to a very special episode. Backstage, I have someone who has become a friend of mine the past year and kind of, a mentor in the world of comics, someone that's been collecting for a very long time, 64 years to be exact, starting in 1960. He was a writer for the Overstreet Comic Book Monthly and the Comic Book Quarterly. He became an advisor to the Overstreet Price Guide in 1995 and has been doing market observation, critique, and commentary in there since then for 29 years. He has literally changed comic book history by proving the first appearance of the Sandman was in Fair issue 39, not Adventure Comics issue 40. So tonight, I wanted to go back through time with this guest, starting at the 40s and working our way up. If you are a fan of comics, you are in some way, inadvertently, maybe even a fan of history, because you have to go back to when they were made and the stories that come with them through the history and the cultural significances of characters throughout history. It all just culminates, and it's a great thing to learn. So I'm going to bring on my friend, Steven, a.k.a. Steppo, a.k.a. Collecto6.
Hello there.
I first got to hang out with Steven on someone else's show, and then it was Biggie Shack's, and then I was on with Alan's channel, and I was like, I've got to get Steven on my channel. I want a one-on-one so he can talk to me about all these wonderful comics. Steven, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. They used to not mean anything to me. I used to be in the restaurant business for 20 years, so now they mean
Fridays
something
ain't
to me.
Fridays ain't happy. Fridays are busy.
Yeah. Let me just say hi to the chat quick. We've got Eric from SideQuest Comics, a relatively new YouTuber who's a fantastic guy. He's ready for story time. We've got Bruce from Up North Comics, who I actually got into. Him and I used to collect vintage Star Wars figures years
That's
ago.
fun.
And it was really fun. All the way from down under, Alan Carr, a wonderful gentleman who's followed my channel since its inception. It's just nothing but nice. The Library 88. Ahoy, that Hulk one is bonkers. Yeah, it's pretty good, but wait till you see some other books tonight. And then Sal. Sal is from Sal's Comic Corner. He is part of the Codex Station, who I'll actually be going on next Friday on their show. And we're going to be doing a character of the day, and we're doing Man-Thing. So we take a deep dive through the character.
Can it be one that you like?
Oh, stop it. Those guys are great on the Codex Station. They are all avid readers, and they really know their stuff. Next Gen Collector, you should be excited for this one. It's amazing. TJ, how are you? Welcome. Steven, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on my show.
My pleasure.
You really are true. My dad always taught me to look up to your elders, to listen to them. You're going to learn from them. And it didn't hit me until later in life how true that was, especially when it comes to collecting. Because I can go out, if I'm rich, I can go out and buy AF-15. I can go buy the first Aquaman. I can go buy all the good girl art I want. But unless I don't have much connection to that like you do, because you know where those artists have been, where they've come through, what publications they work for. So have you always loved the history of comics?
Well, to begin with, I was just basically the love of the characters. And the first group of characters, comics that I collected was when we moved from our house in one part of the city to another. The kids in the neighborhood we moved into in 1960 all collected the Legion of Superheroes and Adventure Comics. And I fell in love with them, even though to a certain degree it was self-preservation, but it was so cool. The Legion was extremely hot in 60 through 64. It was very, very high demand and high interest in those. Unclear until 1961, and I had books from 1958 and 59 as well that were sort of older brothers and things that would sort of surface. But I love the Legion of Superheroes. I know a lot more about them now than I did then. I just love the characters. And then I saw the Flash. Then I started collecting Flash. And Flash kind of won my heart over. I still have great affection for Adventure. But the Flash, Carmen Infantino's artwork and either John Broome or Gardner Fox's stories were so beautifully done. And it was when DC had Julius Schwartz became their editor. And what he did was Julie Schwartz brought in science fiction along with a strong science fiction background in with the superheroes. So where Hal Jordan is from the Green Lantern Corps, and there's this whole infrastructure of Green Lanterns and that whole mythos, which is a complete departure from Alan Scott, who basically was a guy working on a railroad that a magic lantern he found. And then he became Green Lantern. So, I mean, an entirely much more convoluted and more, for example, Carmen Infantino and Julie Schwartz did, actually it was Gil Fox or Gil Kane before Carmen got it, was Adam Strange. Adams Donenfeld, Irwin Donenfeld ran DC Comics. And with the success of Showcase 4, he brought in Jack Schiff, who was a writer, and he brought in Carmen. Hi, Alan. And basically, he said, I want you to do, each one of you to do a character, and we're going to bring it into Showcase. So, Jack, you get to choose first. Do you want a future hero or do you want a current hero? And he said, I want a future hero. He says, okay. So he came up with Space Ranger. And Bob Brown was the artist. And Bob Brown was an amazing guy out of World War II. A lot of these guys were heroes in World War II, literally heroes in World War II. And so Julie thought, Julie Schwartz says, well, he very secretly, you know, he wanted to still do science fiction rather than a current hero. So he conjured Adam Strange, who of course is an earthling. He's an archaeologist, but then he got hit by the inscrutable Zeta beam and is transported to Ron, which is a futuristic city, right? And there he has his futuristic squeeze, Alana, and he basically has a spacesuit with a rocket pack and ray blasters. And then Infantino took over in issue number 52, and it was and his line and his ability to draw. He's very architectural, and it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And of course, so I loved him, but it was well written. Both Adam Strange and the Flash were thinking men. So was Hal Jordan, but the Flash was very much a thinking man, a police scientist, no less. Mm-hmm. But he didn't just have his powers and have a berserker rage and go do whatever he's going to do. He was a thinking man, how he would actually use his powers, vibrating through walls or doping out how the great rogues gallery that he had against him, this huge number of guys, and the joy they had in trying to figure out how to steal a whole bunch of stuff and defeat Flash. And he basically outfoxed them and had all manner of different ways to do it, but it was very good writing and very, very good art. And that is, and so that won my heart. And then, of course, Marvel came out with the Fantastic Four in 1961. And after 61, then came the other heroes. There came Thor, there came Iron Man, there came Doctor Strange, the Hulk, and all of these characters were coming. And Marvel was pretty much against it at this point, because Stan Lee, basically after when the Comic Code came in, all the timely heroes turned into Marvel. Basically, they didn't really have, like DC did. DC, Batman had Robin and Commissioner Gordon, and he had Wayne Manor, and he had all this other stuff. There was, and all the rogues gallery that he had. But the timely heroes basically were fighting World War II, and they didn't have a structure. There was nothing to hang their hat on after the war was over. And so, plus the servicemen and the people coming back from war didn't want to watch Men in Tights. What they wanted to do is they wanted to see pretty girls and horror and crime and adventure and the mystery and things like that. And that's when the superheroes were really in a decline. And then that's where Good Girls stuff came up in 47. And all of this stuff then sort of built on itself. And the PCH got more and more and more vile until the code came out in 54 and started in 55. The Inscrutable Comics Code Authority. I asked Alan if he could find out on his Q&A to find out where they were, how many people worked there, how did it work, how did they get their books to them, how did they get the stamp on them, how were they approved, How long did they do it? What did it cost to do it? Who was funding it, which the publishers did? But all of these things, and he couldn't find anything about it. So it's still kind of hanging out there in limbo.
That's
So, but
insane.
I would like to do this instead of going from the 40s to the 70s. I would like to go from the 70s back to the 40s
I love it. I love how you're throwing a
because
twist in here.
I'd like to show where we are and then end up showing you where we were.
I love that idea. That is so great.
So shall I
Um,
start?
we should. I'm going to make you big. I'm going to remove myself from the screen. Before we go ahead, I loved your post the other day when you post Hulk Annual 5, and you were showing second appearance of Groot, and you talked about how a lot of those monster books, carried Marvel until they got the superheroes because they were
Yes,
competing with DC, who already had great superheroes.
precisely.
And I thought that was a very, very, important thing because I love monsters. But I
Well, I know, and that's why that Hulk Annual 5 was so great, because during the bicentennial, Stan Lee decided it was then time to basically dust them off and very I will say affectionately have them come in up against the Hulk and have them fighting, with the exception of Fin Fang Foom, who went someplace else. To start off really early, something rather current. This is an Uncle Scrooge book, and because of the cover image, which woke Disney has decided is not nice, and that it is in some way demeaning, in some way to some sector of ethnic something. It says Titanic cover and story banned from future reprints and collections. So this is a banned book. That was sort of interesting. Alan Pollitt, comic collector geek, turned me on to that. Alan and I both suffer from FOMO, and each one of us has the ability to visit FOMO on the other guy. So if I find something, I find he's found one. He says, "Look what I found." And I said, "Well, you just got what I got." He says, "Yes, but I had to get it." Or I saw something that he got, and then I had to go get it. And so uh, here recently, I was showing some weird tales because pulps are on the come, and people who have interest in pulps should consider getting some that they like prior to all the slabbing and having them. We're right at the ground floor at the slabbing of pulps. And I think that it's a great opportunity for people to get in while the getting is good. And then if they wanted to slab them or to have them, because I think this is a true game changer for pulps. And I think it really is. Um, Here's another new book, and this is the very first appearance of the Goon. Is you there, Brandon? Brandon went away. $10.
Can you hear me now?
I can. You went away.
That's weird. Let me try. Let me. Well, I don't know why my volume went off.
It's in 3D. It's in 3D.
I think the comic book G-Man is Gary, and I want to just Uncle Gary. I think that's you. I just want to spend. This is the first dime of money I've been able to make on YouTube since I got monetized. So
congratulations.
thank you, Uncle Gary. That means a lot to me. This is surreal. I'm very, very appreciative. So sorry to take away from you. I was just like, oh my God, I forgot that I can earn money now here. So thank you, Uncle Gary. And Steffo, I'm sorry.
I'll hit you as soon as I can.
Let me try to see if I can get just you.
Can you hear me? My, it's a quiet crowd.
Okay. I got an idea. I'm just
okay.
Gonna go. When you switch off the screen, volume from your mic disappears. Huh. Let me try. I don't even want to take my headphones off. That's so weird. Technical problems.
Well, we'll just run with the ball. I can do it just from here. You don't have to make me big.
Okay. If there is a one you want to be shown up close, let me know and I'll make you big.
I'm perfectly content. Let me do this then. Let me just turn this a little bit. I'll turn it a little bit more like this.
There we go.
and then I can show. This is a book. We weren't going to do the 80s, but this is an 80s book. And this is Graphic Fantasy #1. This is the first appearance of the Savage Dragon. But
Yes.
they called him the Dragon. There were only 200 copies of this book ever made.
That's it?
Only 200.
Those indie books, man.
And all three of the guys signed it and numbered it. And this is number 23 out of 200. And because they signed the back of it, I got a green label and a 9.6 in the day.
You know.
Does that make any sense?
You know what?
No!
No, it doesn't. I love that's awesome. The indie books, I just picked up the Crow #1, and indie books from the 80s are tough. They're tough.
Yeah, that's a big book. That's for Mr. Bleak. Okay,
yes,
now we're going to go into the 70s.
Okay.
And so my mission, as from the commander of this channel, told me that he wanted me to pick out some nice books that I liked from the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, and the 40s. And because I always do what I'm told, my good Lord, 100?
David, that's too much. All right, I'll treat myself to a book. Thank you so much. That was really kind of you.
That's the most I've ever seen.
Wow. Wonderful guy. Check out his channel. Still only 35 cents. Collector from Australia. Wonderful collection. He's coming to the States to get married in April. And now I'm going to find out what hotel you're staying at and have something waiting for you because I'm slick like that.
The fruit basket with the champagne. That's great. Good for. Is this the first time you've been able to take money?
Yes, you have to hit certain tiers.
So I'm at your inaugural siphoning money program.
Let's go to the bar after.
We're secreting money. That's great. So this is from December of 1970, and it is Batman number 227. And this is the famous Neil Adams cover. This is an old label 9.4. It's never been cleaned or pressed. It just was that nice. And so it's one of those ones you should crack it out. But they seem to be rather stringent at CGC right now after the kerfuffle with the fraud books and all this other acetates and stuff. And I think they're trying to burnish their reputation by being very strict graders. I have nothing against being a strict grader, but I don't like if it is too, if they're too hard on you, it's soul crushing, especially if it's a nicer book, and you know that the book is nicer than what they're giving you the grade. I don't want extra. All I want is I want it to be fair.
I couldn't agree more. I have that same one of my books. My House of Secrets 105 came back in 8.5. My presser thought it was at least a 9.4, 9.2 lowest end.
I have the same thing with my Wonder 15. It's like a 7.5 or an 8, and it came back 6.5. And I know it's not.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're gonna, you can't lose sleep about it.
You can't. You're right. You can't. You'll drive yourself nuts.
This is one that everyone seems to enjoy.
Well done.
As we're in the 70s.
First new team, second or third Wolverine, second or third Wolverine, I think. First Colossus, first Storm,
if you count, are you counting?
I'm counting 180.
Oh Lord, are you one of those guys?
A cameo appearance.
I know.
It's appearance,
and a cameo appearance. Mr. Allen always likes to fork people with that. No, 180 is the first. But we know better. The market, it has spoken. Here is the first Blade in a 9.4.
Wonderful. You know, I had that book when me and my wife first started dating, Steppo, 2011. I had that book. I bought it for $80. And then I sold it to put towards her engagement ring, and then it skyrocketed. You know.
Well, listen, that was money well spent. Never regret that one.
Never do. Nope. Beautiful book.
Here is the first Moon Knight in a 9.2.
Love Werewolf by Night. Love Jack Russell. Love that cover. Moon Knight's a cool character.
Here is X-Men number 94 from August of 1975 in a 9.2.
So the one after Giant Size.
All of these I got at one time. A collection came into my LCS, and all of them were very nice like this. And I basically I didn't have them, and at that time I just bought them defensively. I just said, well, they're all here. I might as well just bite the bullet and get them now. I can get them all in one place from an original owner collection. And that's how I got them, except for this one. This one I bought raw and had sent it in and had it slabbed. And it's a white page 9.6 Hulk 181.
No, so you bought the other ones were graded when you bought them?
No, sir. They were all raw.
So you had them, did you have them pressed and cleaned, or did you just send them in?
I just sent them in.
That is impressive because, everyone's so obsessed with it now, but it shows you that there were good books out there that didn't even need a press. And, you can try to chase higher grades, but they're beautiful, 9.6.
And this is a nice one because it has a very, very deep color strike. And there are some Hulk 181s that have a much fainter, and the cover looks almost orange. But this is a nice, heavy red cover. So there's the 70s. And in the 70s, I was in college. I graduated in 1976 from the University of Oregon.
Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. And then after that, I went back to Cornell University for nuts and bolts in an international hospitality studies course. I was back there right after. I didn't want to go because I just put in 4 years at Oregon. And I didn't want to say, well, now we're going to send you to another school. And I said, oh, God, can't I just go to work? And no, you can't. We had our family business was hospitality, was hotel. Do you have to talk to your wife?
Hi, Miss M.O.N.Comics.
Hi.
Oh my God. I'm live, right? Okay. My daughter just had her first night out at like the local preschool. They brought them in for pizza and stuff, and she's wound tighter than a $2
Than a
bill.
drum, than a clock.
I guess she ran across the street and 3 moms had to yell at her. Oh my God.
Oh, gee.
And
well, good for her. How old is she?
4.
4. Oh, good things are coming for you.
I know. So you went back to Cornell.
So we rejoin our hero going over the raging cataracts in Lake Cayuga. And when I came back from there in 1977, then after, graduating in 76, in 77, I was back at Cornell for the bicentennial for America's 200th birthday in 76. It was really quite something back there, back in Ithaca.
That's only 40 minutes from me.
I believe it. You're in Colgate, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah. So 40 minutes.
My bride's one of her nephews, her brother's kids went to Colgate. The other one went to Fordham.
Small world. He chose wisely. It's cold up here.
Mother went to Skidmore, and
nice.
Dad met Mom when he was back at Cornell. He started at Stanford and did put 2 years in there, and after that, then he went. Minnie Mon wanted a pizza party to keep going.
Yeah, my little daughter definitely wanted. She's crazy.
So the 70s basically took on the redo and the retcon of various characters and bringing in the new ones that they did. And the House of Ideas was very much alive. Hi, Bigby. I'll see you later. But as we had talked about in the 60s, in the early 60s, the Marvel monsters were the thing that kept Marvel afloat. And perhaps this is one of the best monsters, and it is Groot.
I've got the reprint.
I actually have that one too. I picked that up, but this is just before the Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out. I heard that they were talking about that they were going to have Groot, and I remembered Groot from being as a kid. I remember seeing this book, and they were really pretty much a dime a dozen. I mean, all those monster books, they're all over the place, and they were always hammered. They were always very, very well read and well, passed them around with guys, because we all shared, a lot of us shared our books. But anyway, so I went online, and here was a 7, and I said, "Gosh, that for that book, that's kind of a high grade for that."
Mm-hmm.
And it had not crossed over yet with all the movie spec, and so I got in right at the last nanosecond before the thing took off.
Yeah, that's a tough one because of the colors on that. It will
Well,
show
that
everything.
bronzy kind of metallic cover shows everything.
Mm-hmm.
The story on this is so different than what was in the movie.
For sure.
This story is some poor guy is a henpecked husband, and his wife is just a complete harridan. She's just ragging on him all the time. Why don't you be a stud? Why don't you be a man? Be a man. And he's going, I have to work on my science. I don't know how they got married in the first place. But anyway, Groot arrives and starts tearing everything up, and all the men in the town are doing everything. There's flamethrowers, rockets, boom, bazookas. Nothing stops Groot. And so then he's going, I've got to save us. I've got to save us. What can I do? And right next to him is his harpy wife, Crow, going on at him. Why don't you get some balls and go help those guys? Fight and be a man. What are you doing, you lousy, simpering little twerp? And he's going, I must figure something out. I know. I will make super termites, and this will defeat it. He says, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? You're such a loser. Why don't you be a man? Go help the men. Go out and fight for us. Fight, fight. And he says, I can't do it. He comes up with these, and then he's the guy down here. I will defeat you. And then he throws the super termites on it, and Groot goes, and he dies. And then the wife says, oh, you're such a stud. And if I was him, I'd say, honey, hit the bricks.
Yeah, pound salt.
Pound sand. Oh, you said pound salt. Ooh, I like that better. But anyway, so that was the original story of Groot, and it was, it's such a departure from the wonderful one we have.
For sure.
This is one that Colossus Comics likes very much. This is another Silver Age book, and this is Strange Tales number 107, and this is the Silver Age version of the Fire versus Water that was done in the Golden Age in Marvel Mystery Comics, the 2-parter between the Human Torch and Submariner. And what's interesting is the original Human Torch was an android. But this Human Torch, of course, is Johnny Storm.
Yep.
And do you know how the Fantastic Four got their powers?
Yes. The rays, the cosmic rays.
They went into the inscrutable Van Allen belt.
Van Allen belt.
The Van Allen belt. And then they came back, and then they had all their powers. And because in 1961, we were just barely getting off into space. I was around for when Alan Shepard went up in the Redstone rocket, and the story always went that Walter Cronkite said that Alan Shepard, tell me, Alan, what were you thinking about sitting on top of that Redstone rocket in your capsule, getting ready to go into space for the first time? And he says, look, I would appreciate, I'll tell you that I would appreciate if you never told the story, because it's kind of different. And of course, it became one of Walter Cronkite's favorite stories to tell. He says, of course not. What were you thinking about ready to go into space? I said, every single part on the ship I was on was low bid. He says, that's what you thought? He says, that's right, because they were going to light that candle and shoot me into space, and every single thing that was in this thing was low bid. Pretty good. That sounds like a businessman, doesn't
it? Yes. Low bid.
The Legion of Superheroes was my first love, and they still very nice. And one of the things I found was that some of the writers that were in the Golden Age also transferred into the Silver Age. Hi, S. Vaughn.
Hey, Scotty.
And Scotty. And but what Edmund Hamilton was a writer for Weird Tales and did a whole bunch of stuff. But Edmund Hamilton was the one that wrote many of the early stories of the Legion of Superheroes. So all the voices and personalities and all of the things that make those heroes distinctive were from Edmund Hamilton. And so the connection where you go, my God, I know that name. What? And then it's the same guy. But here is Adventure Comics number 247, which is the first appearance of the Legion of Superheroes.
Brilliant. What year is that?
This one is from 1958.
1958.
April of 1958. I would have been 4.
That's just
I never saw this book once growing up. Never. No one had it. No one in the neighborhood had it. No one had access to it. No one knew where they could get it. No, I don't think they even knew what it was. It was referred to, but no one had one.
Where did you find that at an auction house or?
No, I got this from my LCS, and it's the nicest copy of this book, the nicest grade, but the nicest copy of this book. The colors on this thing are absolutely spectacular.
I'm going to make you big for one moment. I really want to see the colors on that. That is just
you got your voice back.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, let's roll with it.
You can leave me big. And on the back, you want to find out if your prize is ready.
Love those advertisements.
Then we go to one of my absolute favorite Marvel characters, and his name is Doctor Strange.
In 9/4. And you know who's hunting that book right now is Bigby. Bigby McFly. That's his target book.
That's one of them.
What a brilliant!
I had this particular book came from a collection called the East Lansing Collection from East Lansing, Michigan, and Harley Yee, who was in East Lansing, Michigan area, was the one that found it and or was involved with it, and there were a few other guys that got involved. Bob Storms got involved, and all the big guys went after Thor and Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and stuff, but no one gave a damn about Strange Tales or Tales to Astonish, which are two of my favorite titles. So they were all still around waiting for me to get at that time, and they all are without and they are all without question. They're all very high grade white page beauties. And
how many books were in that collection that they found?
Quite a few, but they didn't give it a pedigree. Nowadays, it would have been a pedigree, sure as shooting, but back then it wasn't enough.
Ugh.
That's fine.
Yeah, right. You're still holding that book.
I still have something to do, and then of course the obligatory. I want to show people what they want to see. There is a certain sameness to it, and this is my copy of it, but this is AF-15, and I've got it in a 6.5. With no Marvel chipping, off-white white pages.
Look at the red on Spider-Man's costume. That is one of the most vivid reds I've seen on that book.
It's a very, very nice copy.
Again, it's that metallic bronze up top, like
the dark brown.
Take a beating.
It's a killer. And I've noticed that with this,
it was before they were doing pedigrees, right? That they found that collection, Stephen?
Yeah, it was. Well, yeah, when they in the 90s. Well, of course, they had the Mile High collection and the San Francisco collection and quite a few others. But when I basically argued that it should be, I said, this East Lansing, I mean, all these books, and there are a lot of guys have them. But for some reason, maybe some of the big guys decided they didn't want it to be a pedigree. Why they wouldn't, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to wait until they got as many as they wanted, then they didn't care anymore. I really don't know what happened.
Hey, smile,
this is not an East Lansing, however. This is just a book that I got from Bob Storms.
That's amazing.
One,
no pun intended.
And this is another one that I got from Bob, and that was the one that I was showing before.
You know, the whole story of him, you know, they wanted him to be gray, and then the inks didn't work well with it, and it's just, that's a piece of, you know, history within history.
Yes. This particular this book is also very prone to Marvel chipping, and this is also a white pager.
So 7.5 white pages, huh?
Mm-hmm. At the time that I was you're very nice. You know, the thing about it is that a lot of those, a lot of those, the books back then, Marvel wasn't making these things to be Gutenberg Bibles or anything like that. They were making them to make a buck.
Right.
And Martin Goodman, who is the editor, the head guy, the money man, he bought really cheap paper. They did not
Hmm.
sweat it. DC had better quality materials. Like Dell had very good materials. So did Charlton. But Marvel comics always are quite fragile. They always have been. And here's
Yep.
one more from the 60s, but actually it's from 1959. So I guess this could be the first one of my. So I will put this. I will start. That'll be the one I start that. So those are my 60s books.
I think you picked a good array to show that Legion of Superheroes, man. That's stuff dreams are made of.
It took me a long time to find a copy of that book. They were always real expensive and always incredibly well read. They were all very well loved because that is a huge for everybody collected them. And to have that copy, people say, "Oh, can I see what's inside? Just be careful." Oh yeah, and you're
Yeah,
careful,
rip.
and no, you're careful as hell. You're kids, but even as a kid, you knew you could. You knew right. You got the etiquette real quick because if you were rough on their books, then they'd be rough on your
Oh
books.
wow, yes, some
So
history
you
of
had
being young at that time.
you besides you wouldn't want to wreck somebody
No,
else's.
I thought you were saying like kids mishand, like you know how many comics have been through just put through the ringer by kids that didn't appreciate them, or
The kids that collected where I collected comics took very good care of their books. And even at that, they like older brothers had them and stuff. And it just they were worn, but they were careworn, but they were not tattered.
what state did you grow up in?
They were red and red and red.
What
So
state did you grow up
now,
in, Steven?
beg your pardon?
What state did you grow up in?
I grew up in Oregon. I
Okay,
grew
okay,
up in Portland, Oregon.
okay,
What's
gotcha.
left of it?
Give me some donuts. I want some voodoo donuts.
The guy that did Voodoo Donuts, Trey Shannon, his mother worked for me at the Imperial Hotel as a bartender.
That's insane.
And after the Imperial sold, she worked up at our other hotel in Mallory, and she worked at the front desk.
That's
So I know
crazy.
Jane Shannon. I know Trey really well.
Small
I
world.
was there when they started up and everything. Matter of fact, his partner was a bellman at the hotel.
That's
They came
crazy.
up with the idea while they were working for me.
Well, hit. What do you? Are we in the 50s?
We are now in the 50s. This is 1959, and I just got this, and it is the bookend next to Betty and Veronica 40, which is the one in the gymnasium. But this is the one
Ah,
next door, which is so. This was really hard to find a nice copy of this, and took months and months and months and months and months, and finally one came up, and I was able to get it. But it's just a great Harry Lucy cover.
that's just fantastic. What year is that? 1959.
1959. It
Jeez.
is from March of 1959.
Is that one of those books that just has a low census count, Steven? You just don't see
No,
it?
I think that Archie comics were consumed. I think that Disney books were consumed because I think that a lot of girls got these, and
Hmm.
I don't think that girls collected in the same manner that guys did. I don't, not worse, but I just don't think that the majority of them did not care as much. And they enjoyed them and they used them and they had fun with them. But a lot of these, like Disney books and what have you, I think that the kids consider them to be toys. And they had them in their toy room. They had them thrown into the toy box or whatever they were, and put your comics away. And they picked them all up and threw them into the toy box or into the box or wherever they were. And over a period of time,
Yes, it is.
but that's what happened, and that's what was supposed to happen. The kids were supposed to enjoy them,
Hmm.
and but there was a great deal of consumption of comics. There wasn't a lot of preservation of comics. There are survivors, but for the most part, comic books were consumed. So
Amazing.
that's my first 50s book. In the 1950s, we have come out of World War II, and we are, of course, in the beginning of the decade. We're in Korea until like late 52, 53. And so closely on the heels of World War II, it was a drag that this stopping of communist aggression into South Korea and all this other stuff. But in 54, the drumbeat against comic books was really pounding and pounding and pounding at this time, in 52, 53, and going into 54, which brought about the congressional hearings about that comic books were not good for kids because they showed crime, they showed them how to commit crimes, they had salacious stuff, they had headlight covers, caboose covers, they had monsters with having their heads ripped off and arterial flow going all over everywhere. And for strange reason, mothers didn't care very much for that. And even during the golden age, they could say, they would say, Brandon, get those Human Torch and Marvel Mystery Comics out of your bedroom. We're going to give them to the war drive, the paper drive, so we can win the war. Mom, I don't want to do that. Brandon, go get your books because we want to help your Uncle Sid, who's in the Pacific Theater. Okay. And that's where a lot of books went away. And then, but later on, when they basically, mothers still were revulsed by them and the war was over, they still didn't want that stuff in the house and had a great animus towards that stuff. And as a result, that's when all of this pressure built up, and the Kefauver, who was a senator, Eustace Kefauver, ended up having these hearings where they were determining whether or not comic books should continue on. And Senator Kefauver had higher political aspirations. So he figured that he could parlay the woman's vote, the housewife vote, family mother vote, to be a protector of American youth from disgusting, evil, vile comic books. And as a result, one of the guys that really bought into that was Dr. Frederick Wortham, who produced the book Seduction of the Innocent, wherein he went through a great litany of different books that portrayed women in a bad light, the institution of marriage in a bad light, horror, headlight covers, salacious stuff, crime, blood, injury to the eye, all these things. And he went and he looked and he found all these books in like 52, 53, 54. And he generated this book, and he used many of these books to illustrate Tales from the Crypt and some of those Gaines books, which Gaines testified and basically had a horrific testimony about the one where the gal has the severed head.
Yep.
And they had this big blow up of it. And he said, well, I thought it was, wasn't as bad as it could be. They said, oh, how could it be worse? She's got her eyes all kind of rolled back like this, and her head's like this, and there's her body down below. Well, we didn't make the blood red. We made the blood black. And we don't really show the bloody stump of her neck. See, so it could have been a lot worse. Strangely, they did not see eye to eye with Mr. Gaines. And so it was either be wiped out or it would be to regulate yourselves. And the industry got together, and that's where the Comics Code Authority came from. But at the same time this was coming on, there were book burnings, churches were up against it, and mothers became much more, if you Google it, you'll see they can show, we had a newsstand at the hotel the whole time. And I thank you for saying that. How I got into the books was when we would go to church. After church, we would go down to the hotel for breakfast many times at the Imperial. That was the hotel my dad had. Grandpa was up at the Mallory. Dad was at the Imperial. And then we would go to the Imperial, and then he would basically write notes and things about what was going on. If things were right, if things were wrong. It was a busman's holiday. He was working the whole time.
Right.
But the place was always packed for breakfast and lunch. And so he would say, well, here, because there's a wait, you guys can go pick out a comic book from the newsstand. So that's where I got my Amazing Spider-Man #1. That's where I got my Journey into Mystery 83. That's where I got any number of different books. And the one that I do remember was The World's Finest, that had Batmite meeting Mr. Mxyzptlk, the yellow cover on where Batman and Robin are all and Superman are all there, and Batmite's doing his thing, and Mr. Mixelplick is doing his thing. And I remember that vividly. But sadly for me, from 1958, 59 into 60 and 61, 2, 3, and 4, all the books that I accumulated and got were in my collection, uh, were kept. They were in the family room, and my mother could not abide clutter. And she told me, "Look, Stephen, you have to get those things up. I can't stand them being out and around." I said, "No problem, Mom." So I put them in order,
Oh, no.
alphanumerically, and we had a cooler next. Our house was built in 1929, and it had a cooler next to the back door with the screens, and there were some metal vents and stuff. And you would put potatoes and whatever you were going to put in there as a cooler for vegetables and what have you. And I there was an empty shelf, so I took all my books and I put them into the cooler. And then a couple of days passed, and I said, "Well, when I was on my way home from school, I go, I want to read that Secret Origins Annual #1. I love that book." And I got home and I opened up the cooler, and the books were gone. And I said, "Hey, Mom, where are my books?" She said, "Oh, I thought you didn't want them anymore." I said, "Mom, I picked them all up so that they wouldn't be in your way, and I put them in the cooler because they wouldn't be under your foot. Where are they?" She said, "Well, they went out in the garbage." I said, "Is it still there?" She said, "No, the garbage man came today."
Oh,
And so that's my mom threw my comics away. And I explained to my mother, uh, uh, as gently as I could, when my hair was on fire, that all my books had been thrown away. As a matter of fact, when the largest log cabin in the world burned down by Montgomery Wards in Northwest Portland, that had come all the way over from the 1905 Lewis and Clark Exposition. Arson burned it, and all the ashes from that fire, it was so hot that the fur, all of the moisture vaporized. It was so hot, it lifted these basically hunks of wood that were absolutely flash, completely evaporated of any moisture. And my parents' house was at 1,100 feet, and it's raining down on the house, these chunks of wood from this first growth timber. From the trees were first growth timbers that were harvested from the Oregon forest, probably 1903, 1902,
jeez.
to then build, 8, 10, 15-foot trunks on these fir trees. And it was terrible. And my brother Doug and we had these jars filled with these ashes from the forestry center. They called it the forestry center. And she threw all that stuff away too.
Oh, that's
But it didn't affect me at all. But what happened was, after the war, the men wanted to see girls, they wanted to see monsters, they wanted to see adventure. And so PCH, the pre-code horror, and also pre-code war comics are
Yes.
incredibly brutal.
Mhm.
The Korean War books, guys are getting shot in the mouth. They're getting, and it's very visceral. And the caricatures and racially charged stereotypes of the enemy, the North Koreans and the Red Chinese, was extensive. And I have just sort of come to the realization, I've purchased a few of these war books from the Korean War era, and they're just wild. They are almost every bit as wild and violent as the pre-code horror. And as it got closer and closer to the when the code was instituted, the publishers were making it was like a one-upsmanship over and over. Who can do it even more? The guy's head that's severed, and it's the clapper of a bell. The guy's face that explodes from radium. I
Mhm.
mean, melting it. I mean, all the stuff that they did, which is just horrific stuff, which promulgated the code. But that's what was going on. So it's salacious females that are sexy, and they're slutty, and they're drinking, and they're smoking. High art. And the guys liked them, and kids liked them too, and the mothers, of course, couldn't stand them. Here is from October of 1953. So this would have been right when I was born in September. This was on the September 53 was when I was born. This would have been on the stands when I was born. Here is Eerie Comics, number
Love
13.
that cover.
And she is a very, very good swimmer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And she says, "Well, I think I'll just go ask the person at that house for a phone. Maybe I could call a cab." Oops. Well, look at the house. He's got skulls all over the house, and he's a skull boy and skulls all the way up to the house.
Now, is that an example of a book they don't know the cover artist for?
The
Or
cover
do they have it
artist
up
for
there?
this was they're saying it's Harry Larson art.
Because I know that there are
No, Harry
some
Lazarus.
that,
Harry Lazarus art. I don't know if it's his cover. It could be.
because in the golden age you get into that where sometimes they don't know who the cover artist was.
They don't because they didn't credit them at the
Yeah.
time. They worked for packagers like the Iger House or Lou Fine or some of these other companies where they basically would create and package stuff. That's where Fiction House and Fox Feature Syndicate and Superior Comics of Canada, they had the Iger House of Art.
That's
But
incredible.
but if you look at the colors, the kind of the deep bluish green going down to the lighter green, and then the big red blondie in the cover.
Can you explain to some of my viewers? I know my friend Bruce from Up North Comics is a huge history a person too, and when it comes to comics, history of the woman in the red dress. Can you tell my viewers a little bit about how we keep seeing women in red dresses?
Because women in red dresses, the red dress is the most obvious, easiest to see. Red is the one of the primary colors that comic books relied upon. Remember, these books sat on the newsstand, and in order for you to get purchased, you had to basically stand out from a sea of comic books. So if you had a light gray cover and it's up against a really stacked blonde in a red dress, who wins?
Yeah, no brainer.
I'll tell you who wins, and it ain't the gray cover. So it's that kind of thing. Here's another one of the same, where you've got another green cover. I love green covers. The Dead Who Walk. This is a one shot, and this was from. It's a realistic comic, but actually, realistic is actually Avon.
Yes.
It's one of the ones, but here she is, and she is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And these guys they want her, and they will get her, and it will be bad.
I love that cover too. There's just something about the waviness and the green, like you said. The green is just, but her whole outfit contrasts it so well.
Oh, she is Abraham Lincoln.
That is just amazing. That was 53 or 54? 53?
This is 1953. This one been out. No, excuse me. This one is 1952. No month. Doesn't say, but it was a one shot 1952. So the other thing that they had was those are two horror books, but they also had good girl books and romance books. But in 1947 and 48 were probably the high water mark for good girl books. And then they sort of, I think that there was some kind of pressure, or for some reason they were not, they basically toned them down, and they put more words into the artwork. In other words, they were trying to be like Charles Dickens, selling installments to make money. I mean, there's just too damn many words in the stories. And all you need to do is, just have a few lines of script and then have the pictures tell the story.
Right.
But they didn't do that. They had aspiring writers that wanted to make these convoluted stories, and all we want to see is what's under her dress, right? So what happened was, as they kind of petered out, then the good girls did not go away. But what the good girls did do is they fanned out. So they fanned out into horror. So the girl in the red dress ends up in a horror book, or she ends up in a science fiction book,
Makes sense.
or she ends up in a Western book, or she ends up in a crime book. And so the good girls basically stopped being, and of course, most of the good girls stuff a lot of it was crime. Phantom Lady was a crime thing because she would stop crime, but she would do it, and the crooks would say, "Oh my God, it's Phantom Lady, and she brought her breasts with her." Here is one of the artists that is very, very famous for pre-code horror is L.B. Cole.
Yep.
And L.B. Cole not only did a lot of these wonderful, fantastic Technicolor covers, blacklight covers. They're just wild. He also did romance books, and he did those for his company Star Publications when he left working for other people. And so he had the rights to print stories from Fox and other places that he had the rights to these stories, but he would create new covers for them. And here is one of L.B. Cole's true to life romance covers. And this one is from April of 1951.
So April 1951, that book comes out. That's 72-year-old book. Who kept that in that good a shape? I mean, it's just, that's what fascinates me too.
Eccentric people, or books that just got lost, or books that were put away and weren't found. This book is another one, and this one I
love that cover.
I had it cleaned and pressed when I bought it. It was raw, and it went to the presser that Ryan from Automatic Comics uses. And I've watched Ryan talk about, I thought it was a 4.5. Wow, it came back a 9.2.
Yeah.
I said, come on, man. Anyway, so
that is one of my favorite romance good girl covers that you've shown. I just love the composition of that.
Well, I've said this several times. Do you know, Brandon, you look at this guy, and he must have something going for him that is really something, because you'd have to have probably one of the largest glands in the world if you can get the women with purple pants and an orange and yellow check shirt.
I know. I love that comment you made. I mean, he looks dashing. He looks like Superman from the side.
Well, Mavis has got the clamp on him, and she's going to rearrange his genetics here momentarily. And his poor fiance or girlfriend is at the door, which is, of course, a trope.
Yeah.
Where
Betty Lou.
What happened? Well, honey, it didn't put out. So that this book is.
I'll get you one, Eric.
So that is Good Girl. A really great. L.B. Cole used kind of, I won't say tricks, but he used geometric shapes and imagery for a lot of his pre-code horror. Skulls and candles and Black Widow spiders, and then let's put a skull on a spider. Hey,
yeah.
Hey, that's a great idea. And everyone's going, what? It's inspired. He says, what can I do with this spider's body? I'll put a skull on its head.
Yeah.
And let's put the Black Widow thing on his chest. Oh, that's great. Put some webs on it. Okay, what do we do for the next one? Something similar. So, but when he would do the art for this kind of material, his proportion and his eye, because there are no tricks with this. This is just damn good art, very well composed. And even though it wasn't the Technicolor wild blacklight colors that were used on this, they still are very, very lush. Purple. He's got that deep blue chair with the yellow piping on it, with his purple Bruce Banner pants and his Howdy Doody shirt.
The fire looks cozy.
But maybe, and he got the fire. He's got the fire going, like an inferno. Mavis had the fire built up really nice because, gosh, it's so hot in here, honey. Do you suppose we should? Okay, anyway, so there you go. And if you want to reduce and keep slim at home, take this here vibrator, put about 200 grit sandpaper on it, put it on your belly, and buzz away.
That's how I'm getting rid of my weight right now. I didn't tell you, Stephen. I mailed away for one of those.
I'm sure you did. Don't stay fat. You can lose pounds and inches safely.
Quack devices. Gotta love it.
L.B. Cole was a very good girl artist and a pre-code horror artist. His body of work is truly outstanding and is appreciated and coveted and chased very much now. Another artist who has always been in the forefront for good girl stuff is Matt Baker. And here is one of his covers that I think is just so lovely.
Mm-hmm. Baker. So do you consider Baker and Cole to be the top of the good girl artists in your book?
Well, Al Feldstein is another one that was
Yes.
really good. Wally Wood is another one that is really good. But Alex Schomburg has good girl stuff that's cute and very distinctive.
Schomburg, yep.
Uh, also,
Al Feldstein also did some sci-fi, didn't he?
yes, he did. But his good girl stuff, Junior and Sonny, and some of the other stuff that he did is really, really good. But I would say, I think that the consensus is that the facial structure and contours and proportions of the girls, that the women that Matt Baker drew, are just, they have that certain something. Not every cover, but his artwork, and he basically would have the women sort of bent over, or had them, they would be a little bit more overt. Jack Kamen is another great good girl artist. And in Fox, it sometimes is very difficult to see which guy did what. You can look at Matt Baker, the hair, to see, and also if you their animals, a lot of times Kamen's animals always look like they had faces on them. In other words, they didn't look like a textbook tiger. It looked like a tiger with a face, you know. But the fact is, I think at times that both of those guys, that they would help each other out. So if you look at, for example, Phantom Lady 17, if you look at her, if you look at her boobs, it looks very, very much like Al Feldstein's work, because Baker very proportional here, like in Seven Seas as well. The South Sea Girl. This girl is not super duperly stacked, but she's very nicely put together.
Yes.
And that's what he does. And the facial expressions and the actual proportions of the face and the physiognomy is just wonderful. And he can tell a huge story. Now, here they are. Are they going to have their meal, or have they already had their meal? I think they, and because I'm who I am, I think they already had the meal.
I think so too. They look very relaxed, don't they?
They look very relaxed.
And his penny loafers.
And his penny loafers, he says, Darlene, I think we got a good thing going. Okay, so anyway, there's that. And then we get to some more of the pre-code horror, wherein you have the evil stuff. And this one is a guy named Hy Fleischman, who's did quite a few covers. That name may not just trip off the tongue for you.
I've heard it for sure, but I can't say it.
Okay, but here is one called Dark Mysteries number 10, and this is from February of 1953.
Oh yeah, that's classic. Yeah, the Burning Ladies. I love that. Is just 53.
1953.
Oh. And what grade is that in?
This is a 3.5, but it's a beauty.
Yeah,
I buy the book. I buy the book, not the grade.
Absolutely. But it also helps when the book looks. I guess if the book looks good for that 3.5, you're happy, right?
Precisely, because at 3.5, I'm not paying 6.5.
Right, exactly.
But the thing is, the guy that I bought a couple of these books from, I got one more to show you, that he was a stickler for page quality and color of the cover. In other words, cover colors.
Right.
And if you have a book that has healthy pages, as much as you can, cream to off-white is not bad for a golden age book. Right. Even for 50s Silver Age books, cream to off-white is not a bad thing. It's just when it gets to be tan or it gets to be brittle, it's a problem, because they've had too much heat on them. So, but if you look at this guy, he's basically rotting and falling apart. And he's got two of these witches that are on fire already in their red dresses. And this poor frail is going to get the chop. He's going to get fried here momentarily. But is that a heinous cover?
It really is. I mean, you don't need skulls and decapitations. I mean, that's just as terrifying.
Look at the moon in the background, that sort of blue, light blue and medium blue striated moon. Isn't that cool?
I love it.
He really came up. I mean, the composition of this cover is just spectacular.
I would love to go back in time and see him drawing that, saying, I'm going to put a lady here and a lady here, and they're going to be on fire. And
the editor would come up, can't you put another one in there?
Yeah, right.
And here's the other one that I got from that same guy. Again, yes. Colors and pages. off-white pages. But
Yes,
here you have the red top, and the story inside this is a wild story. But
that
anyway,
is.
but Dark Mysteries number, is it 15? 19, and this is from August of 1954. So these are Good Girl and pre-code horror, and horror with good girls, and good girls with horror is where we are. I didn't show crime, but I think that the two crime is big too. But I wanted to show Good Girl and I wanted to show pre-code horror, because that really is what describes the early 50s into the mid 50s. It's post-war, so starting about 1947, about late 46, early 47, they really ratcheted up post-war to have science fiction, horror, and Good Girl. There's westerns too, and other stuff, but sci-fi, crime, and Good Girl were the three that really got a lot of attention. And because of that, that's why you have such a wide variety of companies and artists that were producing that kind of material. Now, in Marvel, Atlas, Timely to Atlas to Marvel, what happened was Stan Lee took over as editor, and what he did was he had a lot of the superheroes died out, and then he started going into there was some mystery and crime and gothic kind of stuff, but he had about 10, 15, 18 different Good Girl titles that he had post-war up until and into when the Silver Age, when the Fantastic Four came. I mean, all these different Patsy Walker and a lot of these other characters that came up, and that's a whole nother genre that I could have shown you. Those are kind of cute. They're sexy and they're cute, but and that's I didn't show those because I don't have enough time to do all of that. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, for sure.
Because there are various and assorted others. But now we go into the 1940s, which when I was a kid, in 1960, 1948 wasn't that, I mean, 1945 was not that long ago. And so when I was on the swing set at Ainsworth School in 1960, the war had only ended, 15 years prior to that. And all my buddies' fathers, a lot of them had been in the war. My dad was a little bit too young. He actually went down into Swan Island, into the Kaiser shipyards, and he learned he became kind of an apprentice electrician, and he was wiring Liberty ships, if you know what a Liberty ship is.
I don't. What is Liberty ship?
Liberty ships were these mass-produced freighters, basically, that were basically, it was like building a Model T, but as a ship, where you had all these prefabricated parts, and then you basically put these things together. And the Liberty ship changed the world. I mean, because we could get the goods to be the arsenal of democracy over to Europe. And they were not the most tremendously seaworthy vessels because of the way their hull construction. In order for them, they had a contest. They had several factories doing these. They built a Liberty ship in one day.
Jeez.
But at the time this was going on, in order to have supplies and everything that was necessary, ammunition, tanks, guns, everything that you need to prosecute the war, and for our allies to prosecute the war, you had to have shipping to get it there. That's the only way you could get it there. And so with the U-boats sinking them as fast as they could, and the Graf Spee and all these other German ships and Japanese ships sinking our freighters, and also troop transports, sadly, or oil tankers or things like that, we had to continue to produce ships fast enough that we could still provide all of this. In other words, there are freighters that are full, that are sitting on the bottom of the Pacific.
That's insane.
And on the Atlantic. I mean, their cargoes are complete. They're in the ships waiting. So this was the thing anyway, but Dad was instrumental in that. Mom was also too young. She went into the Red Cross, and so they were there. But a lot of the guys, when I would bail out of the swing set, it was Bombs Away Over Tokyo. or Geronimo. When you jump out of, when you would, when
Yep.
you're in a swing, you get where you're not too high, but you don't want to be too low.
Yeah, they're
And
gonna
then
break
you
an
let
arm.
go, and then you fly off, and you land, bombs away over Tokyo. Then you get back on the swing and do it again. But those the context and the programming on television and the things that were on the radio all still were very, very much World War II centric. And so my knowledge and history of World War II is extensive because all of us knew about World War II, because it was the event was so huge, and it was not that long ago. And then, of course, Korea, which was sort of a continuation. And then it was the Berlin Wall and the Cold War, and then the Red Scare and the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that fun stuff, and all the assassinations that happened in the late 60s, and Kennedy getting bumped off, and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all these guys. It was a really tumultuous time that I grew up in. But at the same time, the cars were cool. The girls were good looking. The music was
Amen.
great.
Amen.
The music was great. But part and part, skateboards, bicycles, I mean, really great stuff. I was very blessed to grow up in that time. But the comics were outstanding in the late 50s and early 60s, through the entire decade of the 60s. Just the content of the books and the continuation of storylines, which you really didn't get that much in the Golden Age. But the Golden Age, the mystery around Golden Age books was, my dad had some books that survived his childhood, and they were so different and so cool. Of course, they were dad's, but they were so different and so cool that, like seeing Superman from 1943, so different than Kurt Swan or Wayne Boring
Right.
drawing Superman, or having Bob Kane draw Batman, as opposed to whoever else they had drawing him, Shelley Moldoff or whoever was drawing him. So with that in mind, Dick Sprang. So with that in mind, I had an affinity, although I didn't have access to Golden Age. But I became a student of history, and that is something that is extremely important, to have an understanding of. If you hold a book in your hand and it's from 1950 or 51, what's going on in 51? Well, we got a war going on in Korea. What is the music like? What are the radio shows? What were the kids doing? What was playing in the theaters? What were the newsreels showing? Same thing in World War II. What were they doing? When they got the wonderful Golden Age books, and they're listening to the radio, listening to Edward R. Murrow talking about London being bombed, or that Rommel is trying to take El Alamein, and you'll see it in the theaters or you'll hear it on the radio, and they have live broadcasts. How about when they're on Corregidor, where they're broadcasting on Corregidor as they were abandoned because our fleet got wiped out? The Japanese came in, and they went in and they took Corregidor, and they captured all of those guys, and they marched into Bataan, the Bataan Death March. But they had a guy that was on a telegrapher that was going, and some guy was decoding it on the radio as the Japanese were coming to get them. And you're listening to this on the radio, and the guy's describing what it is. General Wainwright's is a right guy. We love the United States. The Japanese are upon us. Now, you listen to that kind of stuff and you're reading a comic book. How does that affect you?
I mean, that's where the history in the comic book ties in. It takes you to that point.
If in a movie, you suspend your disbelief to watch a show and get into it. This, you don't suspend your disbelief. What you do is you don the attire of the age and the times in which these books come out, to get an idea of how they were at the time. They're cool to look at just intrinsically, but what was going on when these books came out? How were they? So so Golden Age has an awful lot of stuff going on. I'll start with a big one for you here. Alex Schomburg, as you know, I fixated on him in the 90s, and that was who I sold my entire first collection from 1965, because Mom threw them all away before that.
Mom. Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. From 65 on up to 88, all my books, I traded the entire thing away. and got a huge trade credit. And this guy specialized in Golden Age, and he specialized and had an affinity for Alex Schomburg. And that's how I got into it, and I fell in love with it. And of course, I was a student of the war anyway. And so seeing all of these Schomburg, wonderful Schomburg, convoluted, fantastic, stereotyped covers, I do take umbrage to people who try to say that the World War II comic books were racist. Consider that the axis of Germany and Japan, what the Germans did to Europe and the Jews, and what the Japanese did to the Chinese in Nanking, and the Bushido Code, for how if you had no honor, you didn't really deserve to live, and they treated you as such. An interesting fact is, in POW war camps in Germany, the survival rate was over 70%. The survival rate of Japanese war camps is 30%. You didn't deserve to live if you were captured. And so this is what they did, and they call it the rape of Nanking. Now we're supposed to smile and be polite to these people that are basically trying to kill us and ruin our way of life. I'm sorry, I can't get that. If the revisionist history people want to basically call it that, they're more than entitled to, but they're damn wrong. It was the times in which they came. You can't take the history out of the times in which they came, any more than you can the Civil War, the First War, the Second World War, Korea. Those were the times, and they were real, and they were dangerous. And our way of life and democracy and liberty were at risk, and not just kinda, but for real. So to then say, well, we were hand-wringing, I don't like to look at those books because they're so naughty and terrible. Well, get a grip and understand what you're looking at and why they are that way and when they came from.
They are pieces of history. They are literal pieces of history.
Plus the fact that the Germans and the Japanese were doing everything they could think of to vilify, and they had those films where they show the Jews as rats. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I did, I think, in a history class in high school.
Okay, well, the stuff that they did was absolutely, in our comic books and in our culture is nothing compared to what the Japanese and the Germans were doing. Anyway, so I'm sorry, but that bugs me. Understand and appreciate what you're looking at and why it is, how it is, and from where it came. Here is Terrific Comics, number 5. And this is from Continental. And both Continental and Holyoke were not tremendously large producing companies. Holyoke also had Catman. They had various others, and Continental. But Continental was smart. Whoever was running that company, they got Schomburg and L.B. Cole, and they got Fujitani, and it just ended up being a very, very good. They got really good artists, and this is, of course, a very, very.
That's one of my favorite covers. There's so much going on, but I mean, you could focus on every part, each different part of that, and there's just so much going on. Like you said, they are pieces of history, and you got to look back at that through that lens. And there was, it wasn't that long ago. It's less than 100 years. I mean, it's crazy to me.
Well, this one is from 1944. So 56 and 24 is 80, right?
Yep.
I went to public school, so that's 80.
You know what? I forgot to tell you, Steppo, my grandfather, you're a big, historian. My grandfather was in the Big Red One in World War II. He was 3 major invasions he spearheaded. He was at Normandy. He was one of the first few boats off and somehow survived at Normandy.
Wow.
He was northern Italy, northern Africa, Tunisia and Morocco, and Italy.
Now Normandy was last because that was in 44, but our first was when the Big Red One was when they went in, and they went into North Africa, and that's where Kasserine Pass happened, where we got our asses handed to us. That's when George Patton took over.
He served under Patton.
and then he took over because we had the tanks, we had the thing, but we didn't have good leadership, and our soldiers were not ready to go, and we basically got our asses handed to us.
I did a living history report on him, and he'd never talk about the war. Me being, I was trying to learn, but he never. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people didn't want to talk about. They saw
Yeah.
some terrific things. But I thought I have to take a picture. I have his jacket that I framed for my dad for his birthday one year with all his patches and his regalia. I have to take it and send it to you. You'll get a kick
I'd
out
love
of
to
it.
see it.
You'll get a kick out of it.
My grandfather was in the First World War, and he was an ambulance driver, and he was in the vanguard that went over to Europe, and he was at Harvard University at the time. Harvard had more ambulance drivers than any other college. A lot of colleges basically went over. They all stayed together the whole time. And Dad had the Harvard group, and uh, all of those things that were going on over there, the French wanted us to help take care of their wounded so that the rest of the French soldiers could go and fight for their country.
Right.
And my grandfather was right up there by the trenches, and he was at the Argonne Forest, and he was at Verdun. And so he saw stuff, he saw the worst that could possibly be seen
Ugh.
from the war. But I wrote a book about him. Anyway, here's another
Of course
golden
you
age.
did.
What?
Of course you did. You're just a Renaissance man.
I guess I am. My dad was. I know that.
Yeah.
This is from September of '47, and it is Airboy.
Oh,
Airboy
wonderful.
number 8.
I'm taking pictures of you with these, and I'm gonna make a collage of the decades to show anyone that to keep advertising after the fact, because it's been so cool to go down from the 70s and 60s and 50s and see all the different influences and things change, and that is just a wonderful, wonderful cover.
The colors on this, the purple going down, the deeper purple down to the lighter purple, the gal in the green dress. She's in a green dress, not a red dress, you'll note.
They got a plane on there anyways. They have so much fun stuff going on.
But she is the damsel in distress, I'm here to say.
Airboy. Can you imagine some kids seeing that on the rack and being like, Airboy, I gotta
Airboy. How would you like if someone called you Airboy? That's from No Time for Sergeants with it's just if you've ever watched that with Andy Griffith, it's really a great movie. One of the characters that I really loved in the Golden Age was Green Arrow. And this is, I believe, his first cover appearance, and this is in Leading Comics #1. This is from 1941 winter. So this was prior to Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
The 7 Soldiers of Victory, and the Star-Spangled Kid, but Stripesy's not there. But the Vigilante, the Crimson Avenger, the Shining Knight, and then Green Arrow, Speedy, and the Star-Spangled Kid. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug.
Doug's a sweetheart.
This is from the Windy City pedigree, which would be Chicago. And this has, what is it, pages? Off-white pages. Here is a timely from June of 1942. Off-white pages is Captain America.
And number 15. Oh, huh? What year is that?
This is June of 1942. So it would have come out probably in April of 42, which would have meant that only 4 months prior, Pearl Harbor was still a shambles, and we were at war. And this has Nazis on it. You can't see it that well, but you can see the swastika in the back, the Nazi robots, and the guy is going to do God knows what to whatever her name is, Betty Ross or whatever the name was, the gal that and this cover was drawn by Al Avison. Now, Al Avison was a staple at Timely, very distinctive art. A lot of his villains and robots and stuff. I mean, the way he did it, sharpened teeth and all that other stuff. And another guy that they had, his name was Sid Shores, who also was very good. Well, Avison got drafted, and basically had to go into the service. So Sid Shores picked up the slack, and then Sid Shores got drafted, and he ended up going into Army, and he ended up going, and he was with Patton. And when he got back, he was talking stories with Jack Kirby, who also was with Patton.
Yep.
And they were in the same unit, and they had never met each other.
That's
And so there was
insane.
this great, they were, oh my God. And so they all went through this. Sid Shores was wounded very badly in action. And then he was evacuated out to England, and he had to convalesce there for some time before he then came back to the States and then go back to work. But I don't believe Avison, I think, came through, and so did Kirby. But Sid Shores got shot up pretty bad.
What issue number was that? Step again?
This is issue number 15. This is Captain America number 15.
Man, look at the vivid. Where did you happen upon that one for your collection? Was that Austin?
Because I'm an advisor to the guide, I got a phone call from someone here in Portland that said, we see that you're in the Price Guide. And
come on over.
Could you come over and help us understand what we have? I said, I'd be happy to. So I took a Price Guide, and I approached it the same way that Lunch Money Mike did. I didn't try to take advantage.
Yep.
I tried to help them, because I said, now here's the grade, and this one had a big spine roll on it, so it did not look as good as it does now. I mean, it was pretty well whiffed out, but there was no spine break, there was no color breaks on the spine.
Right.
But it was just really rough. It had lived in a very odd position. It's like when you fall asleep in the wrong position and you can't move your neck. Well, this one couldn't move its neck. So what happened was, it ended up, I told them what the prices were, and they said, are you interested in buying any? I said, well, I'd be happy to, and I will pay you, and we can agree on a price, and we'll go from there. And okay, and I paid them. The rest of the stuff, what I did, I don't really have great interest in that, but I will give you the name of some reputable dealers I know who will take good care of you, and they won't screw you over. And they were very, very appreciative. I had that for a couple books where that happened.
Building that kind of relationship through integrity will just get you so far.
Well, I think karma does play around. Broken Neck Comics.
I like that. Hey, CJ.
This one I've shown several times, but it's such an amazing thing. This is Bullet Man #1, and it has an additional color. It has a metallic silver that they
How do you think they got that in there? It looks like a scratch-off silver.
Yes, it does. It looks just like a lottery ticket. I mean, it looks like a scratch it.
How did they get that in there?
I don't know how they did it, but it has all the primary colors +1 to put that silver. Isn't that incredible?
That one blows my mind too. It's like they hand painted it on. It's just brilliant. When the light hits it, is that the first foil cover?
I don't know. It has to be pretty darn early as far as for that treatment. But Fawcett had a lot of money. Fawcett made a lot of money. And they, of course, were at odds with Superman, because Captain Marvel was a complete ripoff of Superman. But at the same time, their advertising and merchandising was very, very effective. The little gliders and all that stuff that they had, all that Captain Marvel stuff. I've got just a few more, and then I'll wrap.
Yes.
One of the titles for Timely, other than Captain America, that's one of the flagships, is Marvel Mystery Comics. And here is one from 1946 from June. And this is Marvel Mystery Comics number 73.
Yes, I love that. Then that's when the Human Torch was an android or a robot.
Android.
What year is that again, Stephen?
46. This
46.
is from June of 1946, and the cover was done by Vince Alsatia.
Now, did that come from the same collection as the Captain America, or is this a different collection?
No, this was an acquaintance of mine that lives close by, that I met at one of the LCSs that we both went to, and he's on Instagram, And he said, I wanted to sell a few books. Are you interested? And I said, sure. So this was one I bought from him.
What a great cover coming through the newspaper. Just
Well, all those are green werewolves that are all around him.
oh, that makes it even better.
Werewolves are Torch and Toro called to take on the werewolves, the green werewolves all over.
I love it. I love it. That is beautiful. Thank you.
This cover was the book that my dad had that Mom threw away, but it didn't have the cover and it didn't have the first 2 wraps.
What number is that?
Number 17.
17.
And this collection, the number 1 for this collection, was owned by John Burke. And Burke's copy is the same, it had the same thing as mine. And that was the guy that owned it, signed it with blue ink in the top right-hand corner. And the dealer that had this, and this was in the 90s, basically floated the signature off the cover because it was a water-soluble ink. And I think he used distilled water and vinegar to get it off. I mean, basically just floated it, then dried it. And because of that, it's conserved.
Yeah. Still looks beautiful from my house.
There's
the Defender, the Daisy Defender. That's wonderful.
Now, this is a 1,000 shot. Is this a BB gun or a pop gun?
Golden Age Human Torch was, Bruce. Golden Age Human Torch was an android. And then
yes,
remade as Johnny Storm later on.
Right. They retconned
it, yes.
And you could say that Mr. Fantastic was Plastic Man.
Yes, yeah, right.
Girl, the Invisible Woman was the Invisible Scarlet O'Neil. Yes. And the Thing could have been any of a number of monsters.
Yeah, pick a monster.
The last one I'll show I just got, and I am not every so often if there's a book that looks really nice to me. I do like Hawkman. I like Hawkman in Golden Age, and I like Hawkman in the Silver Age very much. But I got this one, and I just was surprised that this would even get out, and I was able to haggle it down.
Do you just got that? Is this a M.O.N.Comics
This just
exclusive?
came in the mail, yeah. My comic shop.
Yeah, ding. I was very happy with my first experience from them. They were great.
Well, I wanted you to be able to, I mean, that's why I recommended them to you. They are a first-rate operation, and they pack well. They treat you well. They're honorable, and they grade low specifically, so you'll always be happy with what you get. Unless if it's slabbed, of course, you get because you got the grade on it.
So yeah, it's so funny. One of the books that I got this year, I saw on eBay for, let's say, $85, and the seller said My Comic Shop, and I said no way. So I went to their website, and sure enough, they had it listed for $70 on there. They were only selling it higher on eBay to cover some of their fees. And I loved their packaging. I loved their single slab box. It was awesome. Couldn't have been happier. Definitely going to go there again. But that's beautiful. What is the significant? Who did that cover?
Sheldon Moldoff is his name. He did a lot of Batman. He did a whole bunch of stuff. Shelley Moldoff did a lot of stuff, and he signed this. He went by Shelley, and if you can see it says Shelley.
Yep.
He signed his cover Shelley, but he was Sheldon Moldoff.
That is wonderful.
But that is the lot, and I've enjoyed being able to stroll down memory lane with axe and crowbar.
Wow, my head is full of information right now, but it feels good. Yeah. I have one book to show you that I just got into from, actually, he was in the chat. Doug Botkin, a friend of the channel, sent me this, and it was so, you started talking about these, and it's very much been in the news lately with CGC starting to grade them, but he sent me an awesome Weird Tales.
Very nice.
Isn't that a sweet cover?
I love the guy on the top, Manly Wade Wellman. Say that 3 times, sir. Manly Wade, Manly Wellman.
Doug, thank you for this. Yeah, everyone can chat with Steppo all day. He's a gem. My mind is full. That's when I was like, we talked about doing this and leading up to tonight, I was just so giddy knowing, yes, I love seeing your collection, but knowing the knowledge that I would now learn from your stories about those books, about the times, what we were going through, during those times. It's exactly what I thought it would be, and then more. So thank you for
My
helping,
pleasure.
really, expand the comic book. We have people watching tonight. People are going to be able to watch the rerun. I'll watch the rerun because this information is just so important to keep going. And that's what Uncle Gary was saying from the Codex station is you've got to understand where it all came from. You got to keep it going. We are the stewards of this, and you're doing a fantastic job. You're funny, you're witty, you're a great person to interview. And I'm so glad I finally got you one-on-one on the channel, Stephen. And I love your Instagram posts. We talk a lot. I just really appreciate your friendship in this hobby, man. It means a lot to me.
My pleasure. Same way. Likewise, I'm sure.
Well, gentlemen, everyone in the chat, thank you so much for hanging out tonight. Comic Journey, saying it best. Know your history, people. Know where we came from so we don't repeat it. Steve and I are going to go chat backstage, but I hope everyone has a great, safe weekend. Until next time, keep reading those comics.
See you later.